Hey friends, it's Cassie. Welcome back to another video here on my YouTube channel. Today we have the Pink and Main August Crafty Courtyard kit. As far as I know, it is still available, so I'll have it linked down below. But I do want to show you that I went ahead and stamped out all the images, and I went ahead and Copic colored them. And I kind of kept the same color palette that was going on in the kit. You could absolutely have so much fun coloring up these flowers, all different colors. I can imagine that would be super fun, but I just did this, and I'm going to run this through my die cutting machine with the matching dies that came with it. And then we'll get on to making our first card. If you missed the unboxing of this, I'll have that linked down below. But yes, as far as I know, as far as filming, this kit is still available. As you can see, we're going to be making a slimline card. So I cut a green panel. This cardstock comes from the kit. I cut this green panel to be 3.5 inches by 8.5 inches. And now I'm just taking some cuts of some of the pattern paper that came in the kit, some thicker and some skinnier, and I am attaching those to the front of the card. And then I'm going to do that to the other side as well, so we have a little bit of symmetry. So, yeah, but I love this color palette, and I say that every month. Michelle just knocks it out of the park with the color palettes. I have yet to be disappointed. I always love them. And sometimes it's colors that I just wouldn't think to grab for, but love it. All right, so we've got that down. I'm going to trim off the excess of that patterned paper, and then I decide to bring in the embossing folder that comes in the kit. And normally embossing something like this, especially a slimline, would be kind of difficult, but I'm just going to do it right in the middle. That will add texture and interest. But before we do that, I'm going to take the Hello die and the shadow that came with it in the die set, and I'm going to cut that out of the glitter stock or glitter cardstock that came in the kit, and then we're going to attach down the word hello that I cut out of some of the white cardstock right to the front. Now with something like that, you definitely want to use a good adhesive, because otherwise it won't stick to the glitter or the glitter cardstock. So here I am grabbing out that embossing folder. It's going to work perfectly to go right through the middle here. So follow your instructions on your embossing machine or your die cutting machine, but take a look at that. It's cool. It's definitely a little different, but very cool. I did add some foam tape to the back of my little flower swags. We're going to add those to this bottom left-hand corner, and then the other one will go in the upper right-hand corner. Kind of frame out our sentiment. We're going to put hello right there in the middle. And I'm going to leave it as a hello card, but I am going to grab out some of those glitter enamel dots, and we'll add some of the purple ones to it. So I'll add a few down below here on the left or right-hand side. We'll add 3. Kind of however I feel like they're going to look okay. And then I'll add a couple to the upper left-hand side. And then of course we have to attach this to a card base. So we're going to just use the leftover of that green cardstock that we had. That's cut down to 7 inches by 8.5, scored at 3.5 inches. And then I'm just stamping that swag on the inside of the card for a little interest in there. Now we can attach the card panel to the card base using some more of that liquid glue that I've been using this whole time. And then that will finish off our first card. Really happy with how that first one turned out. Card number 2 is actually a grouping of 5 cards. I wanted to take the pattern paper and just make that the show, like the star of the show. And so I'm going to take the dots, and they're all going to be the colored dots. We're going to put that into our MISTI, and I'm going to take the giant globe because I just love this stamp, and we're going to heat emboss that right onto those dots. So I'll use a magic powder bag so that I don't get powder where I don't want it. Just put that all over that, and then we'll ink up our stamp with some juicy embossing ink, and then we'll stamp that down. I have some fine detail white embossing powder off to the right hand side, and we're going to do that for all 5 of those colors that I had up on the screen earlier. We'll heat set in between, but the pattern, I love how the pattern paper shows through, and then we're going to do a little bit more with that once we get all of them heat embossed. But I just figured this was a really cool way to use the pattern paper, and you can make a whole set of cards, and they're super easy to do. So we've done it on the purple, the pink, the green, the yellow, and that turquoise blue. We'll take the matching die, run that through our die cutting machine. So now we have all those globes. And then I'm going to add a little bit of interest to the edge of each of these globes. You'll notice on a couple of those, the purple one and the pink one, I did try to actually use colored pencil, and I like that, but I want to use ink. So I'm going to use some different inks that I have on the edges, just blend those. I've taped that back into place so that I can keep the die cut from going, all crazy. But I do love how that ink really showcases the edges and adds some dimension. I'm going to tack down some different pattern paper that I've decided to match up with each of these designs. And then we'll stamp out our sentiment 5 times, sending a world of thanks. And then once those are all stamped, we'll cut those down. And then you'll have this nice little gift set of thank you cards. We'll attach down each one to the front. And you could use foam tape, but I decided to just use my liquid glue. And then I'm going to grab in those enamel dots, and I'll match up, whatever color I think would be nice. For this one, it's going to be the greens. And we'll do the exact same pattern on each one of those as far as layout and everything, just using different colors. And then you can put these together after I put this strip on the inside of each one for a little bit of cohesion from outside to inside. But then you have this whole set of 5 thank you cards that you could give as a little gift if you wanted. But check that out. Isn't that fun? So that's card number 2 for you. Card number 3 is going to be another slimline. So I've pulled out some of my distress spray stains that match the colors in this kit. That first one was Spun Sugar. And then we're bringing in some squeezed lemonade and some twisted citron. And all I'm doing is putting that on some acetate and just smushing that down onto some watercolor cardstock that I've cut down to 3.5 inches by 8.5 inches. I'm making a mess there with the broken china. Going to try to wipe up some of that so it's not so crazy up at the top. And then we're going to bring in some milled lavender and then also some wilted violet at the very, very bottom. But those are the colors that sort of matched everything in the kit. That's part of the reason I love these kits is, Michelle always gives you a little card that has all the colors, the color palette on there, and then you can just go from your stash and grab what you want. Then I'm going to flick some of that same color over the top of what I just did. We're adding lots of kind of texture to this background. I want to take the stencil that came in the kit, which is an A2 sized stencil. It measures 4.25 inches by 5.5. So I'll heat set this. This is just our base for our background. And then because it's such a broken up background, what we're going to try to do here is make this sort of a continuous stencil. I wanted to see if it was. And it kind of is. But because this is such a broken up background, it works. So I've pulled out some Nuvo Golden Crystal Glimmer Paste, and I'm going to spread that all over this stencil. Highly recommend if you have this kind of stuff, these kinds of things, just use them up. I had to actually chuck a whole bottle of something that I'd only used once because it dried out. And I had done all the things you're supposed to do. So I'm just making it a goal to use up what I have. So here I am trying to see if it lines up any which way. And it sort of does. It's not a perfect lineup, but it's enough. So I'll take that same piece of Post-it tape that I was using to mask, and I'll do that down here, and I'm just moving quickly because this paste dries very quickly. So we've spread that around, trying to get off any of that excess, and then I'm just going to try to move the stencil a little bit, see if I can get that to line up somehow, and then just put enough of that down on that edge because that's all I need. And it works. Like I said, it's not a perfect lineup, but with that broken background, this works. So there we have it. We're going to let that dry for a minute, and when it's dry, which really doesn't take long, I'll stamp out my sentiment. I'm going to pull in one of the globes that I had cut and colored earlier, but I'll trim down my sentiment, and then I'm going to put foam tape on the back of the sentiment and also the globe. You could use liquid glue to stick everything down, but foam tape works really well, especially over such texture like a glimmer paste, because otherwise you do have a little bit of a hard time with the glue just adhering, and you certainly would have a hard time with a tape runner. So I'll just peel off all that release paper, stick down our globe. I am going to trim down this whole background just by like 1/4 inch, so 1/8 inch on each side there, on the long sides. And then I have my card base, which is 7 inches by 8.5 inches, and I'm going to score it at 3.5 inches. This is cardstock that came in the kit. And then there is going to be a little bit of that purple poking through on that right-hand side. I love doing that. So we'll take our liquid glue and put that all over our panel and adhere this down to the front of our card base. And when that is done, that's going to finish off card number 3. All right, for card number 4, I'm going to go ahead and apologize for the overexposure of the light. I had actually made this card once before and forgot to film it, but I had to show you because this is a spinner. I had this idea in my head for a long time. And so I'm cutting out the circle on some white cardstock that I've cut down to 4 inches by 5.25, and then I'm using the embossing folder and running that through as well. We're going to go ahead and die cut a circle through the front of our A2 size card base. I've already scored this and folded it and everything, just lining up that circle underneath so that we have a hole that goes all the way through. You have to have that in order for a spinner. And I have 2 of those globes. One of them, I just cut the circle out because all I need is one of the circles from the globe. I didn't even bother coloring the other part. But this part I do want for this globe because this one's going to be on the outside. So I cut right along that black line, and now, like I did for the other circle, I'm just cutting right along the black line. This works because these are both the same size and they're both circles. So it just works. There is going to be a little bit of white there, but I'm going to try and fix that the best I can. I'll grab out the matching dies for those hearts that I have stamped, and I'll run that through my die cutting machine. And then we'll have those hearts all ready to go. But yeah, so here we have the part where we're going to work on the spinner. I've got some 1/2 inch score tape. I'll put that right in the center where I'm going to have my invisible thread. And you could use regular thread, but I like how tough invisible thread is. And I'm actually even doubling up my invisible thread. So I'll peel off that release paper from that 1/2 inch score tape, and then I'll put down my invisible thread, and then I'll use some liquid glue over the rest of it. And then we'll attach down our other piece. Now, like I said, you're going to have some white showing. What I'm going to do is just take a memento marker, and I'm going to run that all along the edge. So yeah, I didn't cut it perfectly. And if you have maybe a circle die in your stash that works, then you could go with that. I happen to have the circle die that worked so perfectly for cutting out the center of my white panel and my blue panel. And that just worked. You'll see how well this works for this spinner, because you definitely need it to be a certain size. Otherwise, you'll lose the rest of the globe. But yeah, this works out really well. It's just that circle that I cut out is just a little bit bigger than the circle that you have for the colored globe. My next part would be to just take some of that 1/2 inch score tape and put that all over that background, making sure that I go right to the edge because my white cardstock is definitely smaller. And then I'll peel off all of that release paper on there. Before I attach down my white panel, you're going to want to take your globe. And because this is a globe, it needs to not necessarily be perfectly like right down the center. This is why I'm doing it at an angle. So you'll make sure it's nice and tight. Put that at an angle. Then you can attach down your white piece, and that will make sure that nothing moves. And that spinner will stay right where it's supposed to. You may have some excess, so just trim that down, and then check out how that works. You can spin it. It's just enough space in there, that circle, that it spins perfectly. And then this part of the globe will be adhered with some liquid glue on the outside so that it looks like it's attached to the actual, it's just a spinning globe. And yeah, this one's definitely my favorite card that I made today. I love it so much I made it twice. But yeah, so check that out. So what what you've got there is a really fun little spinner. We'll attach down the rest of our pieces with some liquid glue, and then I'm going to stamp my sentiment on this strip of pink cardstock. Just using some more black ink that I have. You mean the world to me. And then I will cut it at an angle on that right-hand side, just for a little bit of interest. And then I will attach this down using that liquid glue, trying to line it up underneath our globe. and then I'll trim off the excess. Max is making sure that I am doing it correctly. But there you go. That's going to finish off our final card for today. I finished with my favorite, the spinner. So what you do is you just get that all spun up. You can close it up, and then when your recipient pulls it out, it'll spin for them. How fun is that? All right, everybody. So there you have it. I'm going to go ahead and show you our cards, all of them. I would love to know which one was your favorite. If you did, in fact, have a favorite, go ahead and leave that down in the comment section down below. But yeah, that's my favorite part of making these, is just kind of hearing what you guys think. If you liked this video, I'd love it if you hit the like button. Consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. And thank you so much for all of that love and support that you guys give me. You guys really are the best. And I will see you very soon in another video. Bye, everybody.